Hello and welcome to another edition of D&D Stories. I am your host Rob from the channel Performance Check, and this is Lockthorne, Part 2. Last time, Haldane the Wandering Sorcerer and Droskor Hammerstone, the Dwarven Fighter of the Undercroft, had been hired by a mysterious individual by the name of Mathis to find the bastard heir to the throne of Lockthorne, a land far across the Silver Sea. Haldane and Droskor had their trepidations about such a mission, and they soon discovered that the kingdom that was indeed supposed to be there was not. It had fallen into disrepair after the influence of a strange force of wastelanders, whose deserts they dwell in begin encroaching upon the verdant land of Lockthorne from the west. Despite we as players and our characters having certain doubts about this particular quest, we found Haldane and Droskor delving into 3 identical dungeons to uncover 3 pieces of a map, to uncover a long-lost king's tomb, to recover an ancient medallion that when brought into the proximity of one with royal blood it will glow. And it wasn't going very well. Upon the approach to this ancient king's tomb, Haldane and Droskor were set upon by an absolutely terrifying, all-powerful, 10-headed hydra. A vicious battle followed, where Droskor and Haldane did their best to keep these draconic heads at bay. But with 10 attacks, the encounter proved to be far too much for characters of our level at the time. Haldane blasting fire from the sky, and Droskor using his Urgrosh to cut 2 of the heads of the Hydra was not enough. Droskor had been lifted into the air by this malicious Hydra and rended into pieces. Droskor had been killed by this Hydra, and now Haldane looks down in horror as his faithful friend is taken from this world. Now, as I had mentioned a number of times in the previous episode of D&D Stories, this story is very much about what happens when player characters defy the Dungeon Master, go against that omnipotent power that can control the entire world, the fabric of reality. And the short answer is this: they drop a 10-headed Hydra in front of your character and watch and smile as it relentlessly tears them to pieces. That is exactly what happened. For a while, me and Mike had kind of got the feeling that Matt was running the game less to tell an interesting story and challenge our characters, and rather outright defeat them and kill them at any opportunity. In those 3 identical dungeons that I had mentioned, we had indeed walked through the challenges as if they were nothing, because Matt wasn't able to find the right balance. But he had not managed to solve this problem with his dungeon mastering, for now, instead of his enemies being too easy, he had now dropped something in front of our characters that was incredibly difficult, and in fact not really an appropriate challenge for 2 characters, I will point out, of moderate level. Don't get me wrong, dear viewers, I believe that there should be threats in a sandbox world in Dungeons & Dragons that are insurmountable. You as level 1 characters could indeed stumble into the dragon horde of a colossal red dragon, for instance. You could accidentally awaken the Tarrasque and face its wrath. But it was the attitude of Matt and how he was going about it. This was clearly a revenge move for all of the times his character had suffered at the hands of Mike, either as a player or as a DM. It really felt like Matt wanted to ensure that he could crush us when he wanted to. And now he was exercising his masterdom of the world by dropping in this Hydra. Now, why didn't we flee? The question is. Droskor was dead, basically, within the... He was dead by the second round. The Hydra had its attacks, all of them. Droskor then went, then Haldane went, and then the Hydra went again on the top of the round, all 10 attacks on Droskor. And he fell. It troubled me as a player. It bothered me as a player. There was a certain attitude and a certain smarmy, victorious smile spreading across Matt's face when he realised that the dwarf had succumbed to the many, many injuries that the Hydra has sustained. And now we see Valdane screaming at the top of his lungs, high in the air above the Hydra, swooping down out of the sky and grabbing hold of, I'm afraid to say, what remains of Droskor. While his head is still upon his shoulders, an arm and a leg is missing, and a good chunk out of his torso as well is just gone. His armour is just ripped to shreds, and his Urgrosh is just lying uselessly on the ground. Valdane is able to seize Droskor and the Urgrosh, sadly leaving his leg and arm, and begins half dragging, half flying the dwarf away. The Hydra, however, is not done, and it is still advancing. We're still in combat at this point, I will add. So Valdane does something he deems might be considered disrespectful to a fallen comrade, but at this point he has no choice. You might have noticed that in the last episode I mentioned that Valdane had now mastered the spell Telekinesis. And telekinesis is great because it has a number of functions. You can either use it to just lift objects of a certain weight, or you can propel all of your magical power into just hurling an individual or an object more than 100 feet into the air. Just like, bam! It's like a combat move almost, because you can be assured that the creature falling then out of the sky is going to get inevitable falling damage. So it was a great tactical thing as well. Great tactical thing for taking out enemies as well in fights. But it had a more utilitarian use in this instance. And Valdane just hurls Droskor's body out of the valley completely. Just goes... And with a last ditch quickening of a spell, Valdane is able to continue his flight out of the valley. The Hydra snapping at him with every chance it gets. But thankfully the sorcerer is able to evade. The deathly beast recovers Droskor's body, which now sits even more broken at the top of the valley, and with his Urgrosh as well. Valdane is able to retreat with his fallen friend. Now, me and Mike are sort of sat opposite Matt on the other end of the table with a dumbfounded look in our eyes. We can't believe what has just happened and the attitude in which the action took place. Matt is sat just shrugging. And rather than bite, rather than say, oh, you did that deliberately, Matt, we just keep our mouths shut. Mike pipes up and he says, okay, so Droskor is dead. But as you may remember, there's a contingency in place. And Matt, the DM, looks over his screen and says, what do you mean? And I know what Mike's about to say, so I as sort of like the neutral party in the middle, say, look, Matt, remember when Theodrex died? Remember when Droskor landed on top of him? And Matt says, vividly. Which is, you know, that was like one of the instigating moments of this rivalry that's developed between Mike and Matt. I said, well, as you recall, as the DM at the time, I had stated, as this is a campaign where there's only 2 characters, there should be certain house rules that we abide by that sort of helps us a little bit. It means we have those epic adventures, but there is a bit of a safety net for your characters in one instant. And Matt seemed to have forgotten this, and he was like, yeah, he remembered being killed by Droskor. He forgot that we had this sort of get out of jail free card, and essentially using the story, using whatever sort of facets of our imaginations we could, we would all put our heads together in terms of storytelling and think of a way that we could have Droskor come back without, you know, the ramifications of having to go and basically spend all the money to get materials and find the materials required for a resurrection spell. And Matt was like, oh yeah. I was like, yeah. That is a thing. So Droskor does have a get out of jail free card. But then Matt says, but he's missing an arm and a leg. So if you bring him back, then he's going to have a missing arm and leg. Unless we do true resurrection, Mike pipes up. And Matt says, well, that's the point. We try and avoid the resurrection spells because of all the resources. I can't just be throwing true resurrection spells everywhere, because then that takes away the importance, that takes away the resonance that powerful spell has over the land. And I'm like, fair, I agree with Matt there. I'm like, you know what, fair enough. You're absolutely right. That is something that we don't want to breach, at least this early in the game. We're still fairly low level, like we're level 8, 9. So we have a think, and Matt says, okay, look, if I can come up with a way that you can feasibly bring Droskor back, then we will go ahead and do that. And I say, that's absolutely fine. He says, but it will mean that Valdane will have to go and achieve this task by himself. And I say, well, no, that's absolutely fine. Look, Valdane can go off on a solo quest to try and resurrect Droskor. And Mike, in the meantime, if Valdane fails, you can start rolling up a new character just in case we have to, I don't know, in case we have to bring a new character in or something. So we all agree. Mike's going to roll up a new character, and I'm going to play one-on-one with Matt to ensure that Valdane can hopefully, at least, succeed in some kind of quest to bring Droskor back. So we continue. A number of days and a number of nights go by, and eventually Valdane can be seen dragging the remains of Droskor, this dwarf in heavy armour, on the horizon. He can be seen dragging this dwarf towards the Stout Keep in which this adventure began. The Stout Keep where Mathis resides. Now, we had done a little bit of research on this character because we found it a little bit suspicious that this individual just had gold lying around. Loads and loads of gold to pay us when there doesn't seem to be any kind of kingdom in place because that kingdom just fell into disrepair. There's only Borderlands-style civilizations, different towns dotted around here and there where everyone essentially is fending for themselves. There's no kingdom. That's the whole point of this game, to bring the kingdom back. So we don't understand what business this guy has or how he's accrued this much wealth. So we've done a little bit of investigating, and it transpires that Mathis is a character that has been rolled by Matthew. He's actually made the character sheet. And Mathis's main stat and supreme stat is intelligence. He has nothing, barely anything in strength or dex or anything like that. He's just a really, really smart dude, apparently. He doesn't seem like a smart dude to us, but apparently he's super smart. And he is a man of knowledge and a man of learning and a man who likes to create things as well. Items of magical power and the like. So eventually Valdane just stops at the door and knocks on this Stout Keep, and the door opens and Mathis goes, "Oh, hello, you, oh no, what's happened?" And Matt, who's playing Mathis, is obviously loving that this smug character who just lives in the middle of nowhere and it doesn't make sense is now going to gloat over the fact that Droskor is dead, even though it's in this character's best interest to ensure that Droskor and Valdane remain alive. "Have you recovered the amulet?" "No, we haven't recovered the amulet," says Valdane. Valdane is really annoyed with this character. I'm really annoyed with this character. And this is the way that they talk to each other now. Valdane is just incredibly rude to this man. And he just says, "No, we haven't recovered the amulet. As you can see, my friend has fallen. My friend is dead. I would like you to help me bring him back." And Mathis says, "I don't know what gives you the idea that I can do that." And in my head as a player, I'm like, for God's sake, Matt. I'm like, don't play stupid now. And I'm like, Valdane just rounds on him and says, "Now you listen to me. You are supposedly renowned for your intelligence. So let me assure you, if you are smart, if you are clever, if you have an ounce of intelligence about you, you will not cross me. If there is a way to bring this dwarf back into the living world, you will tell me, and you will tell me now." And there is a fire behind Valdane's eyes as he speaks to this Mathis, who immediately quakes at the sorcerer's evident presence and power. "Well, there is one individual that may be able to help you." "Spit it out, fool," says Valdane, his eyes dark as ever now. You will tell me where this individual is. You will tell me the quickest route to get to them, and you will tell me exactly what I will need to say to convince them to help me. Mathis is just like, "Speak!" says Valdane, his voice erupting through this stout keep. "Very well, very well, very well. You must travel northeast from here. There is the Rookwood. Within it there is a glade. There you will find the Oracle. The Oracle has terrible powers, but I must warn you, she does not speak to those of this world. She is a terrifying presence. You will die if you merely look upon her the wrong way." Valdane is just staring at Mathis, and he says, "If what you say is true, then you have my gratitude." He's got what he's want now. Valdane isn't a bad guy. He just needs to get the information, and he doesn't want to mess around with this doddering fool, who in his opinion has wasted their time enough as it is. Northeast, the Rookwood, the glade, the Oracle. Very well. And Valdane, with a swish of his cloak, walks out of the stout keep, and as he's walking away, he says, "Look after the body. I don't know what condition he's going to be in when I return." I look over the table after this scene, and Mike is just rolling his stats for a new character, because we've seen what's happened when Matt wanted to stop us from going somewhere before, and now I, as Valdane, have the chance to undo this work. What's Matt going to put in my way? What's Matt going to put in Valdane's way within the Rookswood? With a deep breath, Valdane continues on a solo quest. And so it was, by the sound of new stats rolling, Valdane travels northeast. He pulls up the high collar of his long coat and braces against the weather. Wind and rain pours down upon the sorcerer as he travels alone, his staff in hand, his boots sludging through mud, and eventually he sees lying before him the Rookwood, this foul woodland that is mired in mire, essentially, like it's a quagmire, like it's sort of marshy, and sort of vines hang from different parts of the trees that stand in the sorcerer's way. Valdane sort of scans the landscape, and he's just wondering what he's going to find in there, this oracle. What foul magics await him? So, with a cautious step, he enters the woods. He isn't travelling for too long before he finds this path that is lit by eerie green orbs, and he can hear whispering through the woods. In a strange language he does not recognise. There's a movement behind him, and he turns around, but there's nothing there. It's almost as if the wind is calling his name. Valdane. Again, he presses on. I'm concerned. I'm wondering what fate awaits Valdane at this stage, with Matt in the mood that he's in. At last, Valdane comes upon a clearing, and it's almost like the terrain changes. It's almost like the mire has become just a green, lush grass at his feet. The trees still remain on the circle, all on the outskirts of this clearing, and the moon shines down upon a silvery pool of water. And set in the middle of this pool, there is a large slab of rock. Valdane approaches, casting Detect and Read Magic. Matt informs me that there is a faint trace of the oldest form of divination magic that this world has ever known. Intrigued, Valdane continues, walking across a number of stones in the pool to reach the large slab of rock at its centre. The sorcerer reaches out a hand and stops. This could be a trap. That's what runs through Valdane's mind. That is what runs through my mind as a player. This is what Matt wants me to do. Of course, there were lights guiding me on a singular path to this location in the forest, and I'm just going to blindly follow them. Valdane, a hand an inch from this rock, removes it and steps away. He turns his back and starts walking back across the stepping stones. Rest assured, a voice echoes through the clearing. If I had not wanted it, sorcerer, you would never have found this place. Valdane, with his back still turned, straightens, drawing himself up, trying to make himself look as formidable as possible for when he sweeps around, and his eyes are met with a startling sight. Before him, stretched out across this rock, is a giant creature. It is laying down in a lazy position. When stood, it would probably be about 12 feet tall at the shoulder. It has the face of a female humanoid, but it has the mane and the body of a lion. Sat before Valdane is a celestial sphinx, and it beholds the sorcerer with cold, clear blue eyes. Valdane, ever the courteous sorcerer, just inclines his head to acknowledge the creature and says, "Thank you for making your presence known to me. I do wonder why you felt it necessary to hide. I mean you no harm." The celestial sphinx seems to look right through Valdane. "I know everything about you, sorcerer, and I wanted to take certain precautions. I wanted to see what you would do." "If you know everything about me," replies Valdane, "then you'll know I will not leave this place until I have what I came for. You seek to return your friend to the world of the living. I see you do not have the name Oracle for no reason, then." "Indeed," says the creature, "but I am afraid to tell you that certain powers that are required to bring your friend back from the ether come with a cost." "And what cost is that?" says Valdane. "Either you must sacrifice a part of yourself, or you must face a challenger that I deem fit to face you." "What do you mean by sacrificing part of myself?" says Valdane. "Part of your essence, part of your life force, part of what makes you, you. Your experiences in this world." "Hang on," I say, snapping out of the game and looking at Matt. "Does that mean what I think it means?" And Matt's like, "Yeah." Matt is insisting that if I want to have Droskor returned to this world, I must either face this champion of this celestial sphinx, or Valdane is to part with experience points. Matt details that I must part with an entire level if I wish to avoid the challenger. I am livid, to tell you the truth, dear viewers, for When Theodrex was returned, admittedly Droskor had to use some of that vampiric power / strange necromantic ritual sorcery to return Theodrex back to the world of the living, but it did not take any experience points from him, and he did not have to face a challenger, which, from Matt's history now, isn't certain to kill him. And I say that to Matt. I'm like, listen, I don't think that's very fair. It's a get out of jail free card. The optimum word being free. Both of the things you suggest either mean certain death or me losing the entire level. Losing a level from my character to bring another one back. I don't think it's fair. And Matt just shrugs. I'm like, oh, right, okay. And I've got my backup at this point. I'm not particularly happy about this, but regardless, we drop back into the scene. What is your answer to be, Valdane, Wanderer? Valdane looks defiantly into those cold, clear blue eyes and says, I will not part with anything that I have earned by fair right. And I cast another look to Matt. I will face your challenger. The Celestial Sphinx just fixes Valdane with a stare. Should you do this, you must know that I will not interfere. If your death follows this event, you will remain that way. I will not use my power to return you to this world. The cost will be your life. And Valdane says, I'm ready. The Celestial Sphinx bows her head slightly and whispers as she vanishes into nothing, as you wish. And like a breath on the wind, she is gone. Valdane is stood in the centre of this pool upon this stepping stone. And he looks around and he can't see anyone, he can't see any challenger. Frowning, he looks around. Breath on the wind is an apt description for how this sphinx disappears, for as it does, the wind seems to build air, whistling around the trees, sending ripples across the pool that Valdane stands above. And then that wind grows into a heavy breeze that grows into a gale. Leaves are ripped from the trees as a cyclone of air begins to build up around the rock at the centre of the pool. Valdane takes a number of steps back onto dry land and begins preparing spells. At this point, I become quite experienced. As I mentioned, with Valdane had a number of combination spells that he would cast at the beginning of a fight. They would be Eagle Splendor, a boost to Charisma, allowing Valdane to have stronger, higher DCs for his spells, essentially, and Mage Armor, giving him +4 to his armor class. Standing defiantly at the edge of this pool, Valdane looks as a humanoid, a female humanoid, is descending from the skies as if out of nowhere. The voice of the Celestial Sphinx echoes above the gale that is battering down upon Valdane as this beautiful figure descends upon the rock. She has long flowing red hair and gleaming green eyes. The Celestial Sphinx says, "Behold, an Air Genasi of old. Her name is Aquila, and she is a guardian of old Lockthorne. You are no match for her. I give you one last chance. Surrender a part of yourself, and your life will be spared." I must confess, dear viewers, there's a part of me that thought this This is exactly what Matt wants. Matt wants to depower my character. Matt wants to make it easier for Valdane to succumb to his poorly thought out challenges and his questionable dungeon layout. "Oh, Oracle," Valdane shouts above the building gale, "I thought you knew everything about me." He casts Fly to lift up to the height of this Air Genasi. "I never surrender," Matt says. "Roll initiative." Immediately, Aquila the Air Genasi goes first. She summons all of the power she can from the cyclone whirling about her and hurls it at Valdane. It connects with him right in the chest and the sorcerer is thrown backwards. Valdane finds himself soaring through the air with the power of a gale thrusting him, smashing him into a tree that splinters into 1,000 pieces. Valdane is able to recover quickly, and pulling himself out of the wreckage of the tree, he reaches forth into the sky. There is a roll of thunder, and a bolt of lightning arcs from the sky, which Valdane channels and hurls it back at Aquila, giving as good as he gets. The lightning arcs across the battlefield, grass standing on end as it connects with the Air Genasi. This spell is increased in potency by that eagle splendor, and she is unable to avoid it. She screams as electrical energy pours through her. Aquila is by no means down and out. She flicks her arms to her side, and appearing in both of her hands are shimmering scimitars of the western wind. She scrapes them together, sending a gale before her, which she rides through the air towards the sorcerer at a speed that is unfathomable. She lands next to the sorcerer and begins slicing left and right. Valdane's mage armor is protecting him, but not much. There's a nick here and there that gets the sorcerer in the chest and at the side. Valdane finds himself staggering back, desperately trying to defend against this Air Genasi. And he reaches down to his own side and whispers some fell words, and in his own hand appears a blazing blade of the emerald flame, and he swings it with a violent uppercut, which catches the Air Genasi by surprise. It cuts her across the face, and she staggers back, with hatred gleaming in those beautiful green eyes. Is it hatred, or is it something else? Valdane is looking at this Air Genasi, and what he first deemed to be hatred is something else. He spies her lips curve slightly into a smile, and then he realizes they are not dueling, they are dancing. Regardless, Valdane has no time for this. He is here to rescue his friend, and it will not be at the cost of his own experiences in this life. However, it transpires that that slight curl of the lip, that smile, is meant for just this very occasion, for Valdane has fallen prey to a feint, and this Air Genasi wastes no time in leaping upon that opportunity. She reaches forth a hand and with a swipe hurls Valdane with the force of a tornado. The sorcerer flies once again across the battlefield, this time smashing into the rock at the center of that pool. He is held there for a moment by the gusts of wind blasting him across this clearing. Against the gale that is holding Valdane against this rock, he is desperately trying to reach a hand forward, and he is able to let fly 1, 2, 3 scorching rays forward towards this Air Genasi, but she vanishes, and each ray misses, exploding into the forest far away. Valdane breathes for a second, but then he realizes in horror she has not vanished, No, she has merely teleported, using her air-like powers to move directly behind the sorcerer. Haldane turns in a defensive, impulsive action, but it's too late. The Eye Genasi has just flicked her hand up, and Haldane is hurled hundreds of feet into the air. The sorcerer tumbles up into the sky, but it is now his turn, and as he's being wrenched into the heavens, Haldane casts telekinesis, grabbing hold of the rock as he's being wrenched upwards. The rock comes with him. The Air Genasi has to move out of the way as this thing follows Haldane up into the air. Still holding this firm with a telekinetic grip, Haldane reaches the zenith of his leap into the sky, and with all of his might brings the rock smashing down out of the sky. It hurtles down like a meteor and smashes into the Air Genasi, driving her into the very bottom of the lake. This does a colossal amount of damage, and Aquila, this Air Genasi, is having to spend the rest of her following turn removing this rock off her, and she's desperately trying to pull herself out of the lake when she looks up, for on high, Haldane has quickened fly, and he is soaring out of the air. He reaches a hand to the heavens, and there is a roll of thunder, and lightning arcs down across the sky into Haldane's palm, and he channels it downwards, directly down, vertically towards the Air Genasi, who just looks up, open-mouthed, as this lightning slams into her. And as they say in Pokemon, as she is sat within this pool, it is super effective. The Air Genasi is racked with double electrical damage as she is almost fried within an inch of her life. Haldane lands by the pool, raising a hand when a voice says, "Stop!" The Celestial Sphinx, who is now slinking across the clearing with silent paws despite her great size. She comes to stop just before Haldane, who has his hand still reached, pointing at Aquila, who is sort of floating in the water, barely conscious. The trial is complete, and you have proved yourself. You will have your wish. Haldane just looks up at this Celestial Sphinx and says, "Thank you." And he looks back at the Air Genasi, who is starting to pull herself ragged from the water, and she looks to see the sorcerer's face, and he returns that smile. "You need only wish for what you desire, Haldane, lightning child." Haldane looks up at this giant creature and nods. "Very well. I wish for Droskor to be returned to the living world with," I say with a look at Matt, "all of his equipment and armour in good working condition, the way it was before he fought the Hydra." "It shall be done," the Sphinx says. Haldane nods. "Well, it's been interesting." And he brushes his coat and walks to the pool, and he actually reaches out a hand. And Aquila, who's sort of just pulling herself up at the bank at this point, looks up, hesitant. And then she takes his hand, and he helps her to her feet. "I hope we meet again someday," says Haldane. Aquila doesn't say anything. She just half glares, half stares into the sorcerer's eyes, and then, with a whoosh, disappears into the air. The Celestial Sphinx says, "You will." Haldane looks up at the creature. "You say you know everything about me." "I do. Past, present, future." "The future can wait," says Haldane, and once again he goes to leave. But it's at this point that Mike, from across the table, he's finishing rolling up this now spare character, leans over to Matt with a note and passes it to him. Matt looks at the note, closes it. The creature continues. When the 8th gate opens, you will face your betrayer once more. Valdane stops for just a moment and then keeps walking. Just a little cool side note, Mike at that point had leapt upon the opportunity of there being an oracle that could foretell things about the future, knowing at some point that he was going to run a game, hopefully with Valdane in it, if he lives. Handed Matt something for him to prophesize about the sorcerer's future. But that's another story. On returning to Mathis's keep, Valdane instantly spots Droskor Hammerstone of the Undercroft, returned to the world of the living, returned from beyond the ether. He is standing before the keep, twirling his Urgrosh, rolling his shoulders back and forth, and he spots Valdane. They move towards each other and share a firm embrace. "Valdane, my lad," says Droskor, "thank you. You have returned me. What happened?" Valdane explains his long adventure to return Droskor to where he stands now. "I'm in your debt," says Droskor. "Think nothing of it," says Valdane. "We have a job to do and we have money to earn. Shall we?" "Yes," says Droskor. "I have payback to deliver." And so, we move once again to the valley before the tomb of the ancient king. Valdane and Droskor stare down this rocky corridor and behold once again the Hydra. It stands there, still wounded from their previous battle. 2 of its heads are severed and seared, meaning they cannot grow back, and they drag around at its sides. 8 heads still remain. "Right," says Valdane. "Remember, try your best to keep your distance." "I shall not keep my distance," says Droskor. "Please try," says Valdane. And so battle erupts within the ravine, within the valley before the tomb of the ancient king. Valdane once again soars high in the sky, raining down fire upon the Hydra as Droskor swings his Urgrosh left and right. This time, Valdane and Droskor have discussed tactics. This time, they know that they can try and maneuver the Hydra into narrow gullies, so only a certain amount of its heads can make attacks against the grounded dwarf, while the sorcerer flies above, laying down heavy artillery. Droskor's Urgrosh swings left and right, cleaving through another Hydra head, and another, Valdane sealing the wounds shut with fire. At last, only 1 head remains. The central head of the Hydra is sort of waving left and right. The creature is battered or weakened from the onslaught of the 2 heroes. Valdane lands next to Droskor and bellows, "Finish it!" Droskor takes a running leap, swinging his Urgrosh high, and brings it down upon the Hydra head. It does not sever, however. Droskor has not killed the Hydra, and in its death throes, as it gives a final it scores a critical hit upon Droskor. We roll upon the critical table, which we have had in play this whole time, and it comes up as a 96 or something, high enough to ensure that Droskor has to make a Constitution saving throw, and he fails. One of the Hydra's fangs pierces deep into Droskor's throat, and the dwarf collapses to the ground. "No!" no! Valdane screams, sending forth a bolt of lightning which arcs into the Hydra's head, and it explodes. The electrical energy fusing the final neck stump. The Hydra wheels back, necks flailing, and collapses dead in the water. To be frank, dear viewers, we can't fucking believe it. I mean, seriously. All that work, all that hard work to return Droskor Hammerstone to the world of the living, and he is killed by the same pissing Hydra. Oh my god. Mike is convinced that Matt has fudged the die, as he caught a glimpse round the corner of the DM screen and is pretty sure that that D20 didn't land on 20. But he doesn't really make a big deal of it. He's like, at least I've rolled a new character. Valdane is at Droskor's side. The dwarf is holding his neck as blood is pouring onto his breastplate. Spluttering, he says, "Please, bring this to my father. Tell him I failed. I failed." He's pressing his Urgrosh into Valdane's chest. Valdane holds it close. "No, you did not fail. You fought valiantly. Tell Theodrex. Tell Theodrex." And the light leaves Droskor's eyes. We as players now understand that he has no get out of jail free card. And Valdane looks upon his fallen companion, a dwarf who had become almost like a brother to him. And then he looks up with fury in his eyes at the tomb of the ancient king. We take a leap forward in time, and we're back at Mathis's keep. The door bursts open, and the old man nearly jumps out of his skin. Silhouetted in the door is Valdane, fury in his eyes. He stalks into the keep. "Valdane, you have returned. Where is Droskor?" Bam! Valdane slams his hand on the table, and beneath it there lies an amulet. "I've recovered your amulet," Valdane growls. "Find your own bastard." And with that, Valdane walks past the old man, takes up a sack of gold, weighs it to see if it would be enough, and walks past him. Some days later, Valdane is trying to make his way home. He does not wait for Mathis to summon Darius and his Griffin Rider mercenaries. No, no, no. He is beside himself. We had a moment where we spoke about how Valdane had buried Droskor, and what Valdane had done is essentially made a tomb within the valley, and he'd framed the doorway with each of the Hydra skulls to mark where Droskor, Hammerstone of the Undercroft, had fallen. And with the dwarf's Urgrosh in his hand, he begins to make his way across the desert in an attempt to find his way home. Valdane is wounded from the battle, and we describe how he gets to an outpost which once belonged to the kingdom of Old Lockthorne, and he stumbles in. He has to rest, he has to get his strength back. There's a sudden movement in this outpost, and he reaches out a hand, but a voice says, "Stop!" "Who is it?" says Valdane, his eyes narrowing. From the shadows comes a human, bold, with a tattoo of an eye marked on his head. He wears flowing robes. He has bare feet, and upon his back is a quarterstaff. This man also appears to be heavily wounded. He also appears to be a monk. "Please help me," the man says in a soft voice. "I am wounded. My name is Sayrak. I bring a message from across the desert. Andreas. He's coming. Please help me." This was the introduction of Mike's new character, Sayrak, the monk. And that is where we're going to leave this edition of D&D Stories. That was the campaign known as Lockthorne, which, as you might be able to tell, was abandoned halfway through. They did what they said they were going to do. They recovered the amulet. Let Mathis find his bastard heir, they thought. Thank you ever so much for watching. Next time on D&D Stories, we're going to be exploring one of the best campaigns I believe I have ever run. And it is known simply as Star Thief. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep gaming.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the D&D Stories Facebook, Patreon, and t-shirts on Redbubble. Keep gaming!